Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo. I am not today joined by Joe Rossinello. Joe had an appointment he had to take care of, but nonetheless, I promise I won't let you down. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on your AM dial, 103.9 on your FM dial, spreading the truth of the Catholic faith to the New York City metropolitan area. Please be sure to download the app. Remember, you'll have access to all of our station's content, all of our shows, and we are an EWTN affiliate, so you have access to all of that station's content. And if you like what Joe and I do, we post all of our radio shows on Rumble, X, Facebook, and YouTube, and we go live Thursday nights at 9 o'clock where we get into some real trouble, and we're happy to do that. So please, wherever you see us, like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Help us out. So today, very pleased and honored to be joined by Robert Trussel. And these are, everybody knows Joe and I, these are conversations we like to have because Joe and I say on the show all the time, we learn as much as our audience. We as Catholics, Joe and I, we try to emphasize all the time, we need to know some of the basics, fundamentals, arguments, because there's a lot of them out there. You have aggressive atheism, and other, let's say, worldviews where our view of God, his existence, is constantly being challenged and under attack, quite frankly, in some places. So Bob Trussel has written a new book. It's available at Sophia Press, The Logic That God Exists, a handbook on belief in God through simple reason to bring you peace. And it's something I want to talk about. Probably we'll get to that later in the conversation. We're going to get to some of the logical questions first. So Bob Trussel, welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe, our brother.
Hi, Joe.
Good to see you.
Great to be here. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Just for those of you, Bob is well known in the business world, and you're going to understand why. I'm just a quick bio. Robert Trussel is the founder and retired chief executive officer of Tempur-Pedic International, and was vice chairman of the board from 2002 to 2022. Tempur-Pedic, many of you know the company, you know the brand, acquired Sealy Corporation in 2012 and is now known as Tempur Sealy, trades on the New York Stock Exchange under the symbol TPX. Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, about a $9 billion company, correct? I think that's your market cap as of this morning.
It's getting there. Yep.
All right. Sounds good. And he took the company public in 2003, like I said, where it trades on the big board. In 2006, he retired as CEO of Tempur-Pedic to serve Christ full time, which is something I really want to get into. And by using the media for evangelization. And everybody knows that Joe and I and what we do, that's exactly our purpose here. That's all we do, is we're simply trying to evangelize people. Bob is currently president of Clean Media, a digital advertising platform catering to Catholic, Christian, and secular websites. So, Bob, thanks again for coming on the show. I did get your bio right, I hope.
Yes, you got it perfect.
All right, absolutely. Let's start, Robert Trussel. Let's start with a couple of basics, okay? Because I think sometimes as Catholics and other Christians, I mean, we seem to take these things for granted. In your view, you're a wealthy man, okay? And a lot of people fall into traps of wealth, things like that. But you quit, let's say resigned to serve Christ full time. Why do you think human beings are here on this earth? Because obviously you've done something that a lot of people, quite frankly, don't do, which is to serve God. Why are we here, in your view?
In my view, we're here to recognize the truth that we are creations of God and to do God's will. And that's the natural thing you should, a position you should be in if you're in a position of gratitude. So God created us, created the world, and so we should be inherently grateful for that, and we should be looking at how to do God's will. And in my case, I was in the business world, and I had a lot of ups and downs, and I was in my early 40s, and I was in the racehorse business my whole life, and that business kind of collapsed. And I was Catholic, but I went to St. Monica's grade school, Dominican high school, and Marquette University. So I had Franciscans, Dominicans, and Jesuits upbringing. but I didn't go to church for about 10 years after that, except when my mom made me go. But I got married in my early 30s, and then I was doing really well in the horse business, which then, as I said, collapsed. And all of a sudden, I got two little kids. I'm 40 years old. I'm $1 million in debt, no job, two houses, can't two mortgages, uh, and I didn't know what to do. So I kind of fell back on my Catholic roots, and I rolled up my sleeves and went to church. I started going to mass in the mornings, and I said to God, I said, I don't know what to do, and I'm open to suggestions, and please show me the way. Because my mantra up till then is I was a horse guy. I wanted to be in the racehorse business, and that was all I wanted to do. But I told God, I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be in my beloved horse business. And so that put me in the attitude of of looking for His answer, looking for something from above, and any opportunity that came my way, I said, well, this is it. God's answered my prayer, and I would say yes. So I said yes to two or three pretty lousy businesses, and we started them. And I don't want to get into all that, but uh, then after 2 years, wasn't that long, I met a guy who, through my horse trainer in France, met a guy in Sweden who claimed to make the world's greatest mattress. And I said, okay, I'm getting on a plane, I'm going. And I went over there and I met the guy and I stayed at his house and I slept on the mattress. I said, this is the most unbelievable product I've ever encountered. He said, well, we're looking to launch this. We just launched it in Sweden. We're going to go worldwide with this, and go back to the States and write me a marketing plan. So I said, okay. And so I did, and I came back and I wrote like the world's worst marketing plan, but somehow he liked it enough to give me exclusive North American distribution rights. And we called this new company Tempur-Pedic. And that's how it all got started. And that's how, so for me, uh, and that thing struggled too, but it got off the ground, and it went beyond my wildest dreams. And the next thing I know, I'm ringing the bell on the New York Stock Exchange. And I said, okay, Lord, you've answered my prayer abundantly, more than I could ever imagine. And I want to give back. Show me what I can do to help the cause, to help to do your will. And so that was done out of gratitude. But I think we all have that gratitude, should have that gratitude in us, because we're all here. We didn't create ourselves. God created us. And if we have any belief in God at all, we must have a hope that we're going to end up living with Him after we die.
Absolutely. Robert Trussel, there's so many directions I want to go in, and I could already tell that I could talk to you for 5 hours. But we only unfortunately have an hour's worth of radio, so I'm going to go here. But real quick, Robert Trussel's joining me here at the front line with Joe and Joe. The book is available at Sophia Press. We will put a link in the description. Please click the link. You'll get a 15% discount because you know Joe and Joe from Sophia Press, and we want to support our Catholic publishers. Okay, the logic that God exists, a handbook on belief in God, through simple reason to bring you peace. And we'll talk about peace a little bit more, but let's talk about simple reason. Bob, I say on the show all the time, I know that it takes faith to believe that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. I know that it takes faith to believe that He is present in the Eucharist. I know that it takes faith to believe that I'm forgiven of my sins in confession. One thing I don't believe requires, and you please correct me if I'm wrong, or tell me your view. I don't think it requires any belief at all or excuse me, any faith at all to believe in the mere existence of God. I think if you just use the logic that you're talking about and you apply some scientific knowledge to that, in the beginning there was nothing, and God created the universe out of nothing. It's logical. Tell me if you agree with that statement, because like I said, I believe God exists.
Yeah.
And I think it's just logical. I don't think you could hold any other view.
Exactly. And that's the title of the book, The Logic That God Exists. And it occurred to me throughout my life is that there has been a fundamental weakening in the belief in God, which is to me, I'm like you, is crazy. And so I thought that there's got to be a way to uh, show people that logically and even mathematically and scientifically, there has to be a God. Not only might there be a God, there has to be a God. There's no way everything happened by itself. And if you look at it from a mathematical standpoint, the odds or the chance of if there was a big bang and there was a bunch of energy and matter bumping around, for that to randomly become an amino acid and the first protein is completely impossible. And the analogy that I give in the book is it's like saying if you blow up a graveyard, all the remnants of the graveyard will come down and form a working space shuttle. That is the odds. And I said that once to an atheist, and he said, well, if you blow up enough graveyards, I said, no, I don't care how many graveyards you blow up. It's not going to come down in the form of a working space shuttle. And so, and as far as the protein forming randomly, there's no way there hasn't been enough time and there's not enough matter for it to happen randomly. And then if it did happen, even if we had a random protein, then with no guiding hand, that protein is supposed to end up developing into life and then into humans. There's just no way, and it's self-evident. And to me, the poorest and illiterate mother of 8 kids in Mexico City, she gets that. But there's a lot of people in our universities and media and in who are you might call them the elites. They don't get it. They think, oh, well, it's all about the science, Bob, and the science, But the problem with science is it's always changing. They're always saying, you see headlines that, well, scientists discover, or scientists are surprised, or scientists this, or that science is a learning of what's already there, and it's incredibly complex, our universe and our world, and for you to understand that, and any one moment is always going to be different at a later time as you get more knowledge.
Absolutely. Bob Trussel's joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Please go out and buy his book. It's available at Sophia Press. Click the link in the description. The Logic That God Exists, a handbook on belief in God through simple reason to bring you peace. Bob, I'm of the opinion, my partner Joe Rossinello, we're of the opinion, if you're put in a position where you're going to say, all right, well, a God exists. Certainly not that Christian God, certainly not that Muslim God, certainly not, because if you have to acknowledge that God exists, then it's going to bring up metaphysical questions, okay? Those that transcend just the material world. And one of them is, why did God create us? And that's going to require a response that Joe and I on the show, Bob, and please, if you don't agree, tell me. People don't want to change, especially in the modern world
Right.
where there is a quote from C.S. Lewis: when people stop believing in God, the problem is not to believe in nothing; it's to believe in anything. We have a world now, a modern world, that simply believes in any lunatic idea that comes along that doesn't comport, let's say, with the existence of a creator, all-loving, all-powerful God. I think you know where I'm going with that. I'd love your comments.
Right. Uh, an all-powerful God is something that is hard for people to get their arms around sometimes. But generally speaking, from a logical standpoint, if you start with the premise that, okay, we know that there is a God, what then? Where does that lead you? And it leads you to think that maybe uh, if you were God, and I have a chapter that's saying it says, "What if you were God? What would you do?" You would probably want your creation to recognize you, and you would want them uh, to know you and follow you, and you would show them the way. But the problem is, God cannot do that in a way that makes us into puppets. He can't just say, he can't make us do it any more than we can make our own kids do it. So he has to do it in a way that we can seek him and with our own free will, and that is the important thing that he's given us. It's another gift.
I want to stay there for a second because you used the word puppets. Okay. On the show, I've used the word pets. God didn't create pets. He didn't create puppets. He didn't create robots. And I think sometimes people, in the title of your book is the word logic. I think people sometimes fail, either willfully or woefully, not sure, try not to judge, to recognize the idea and the profundity of the concept of free will vis-a-vis God. Okay. God gives you a choice. You are a human being. If he wanted pets that he could control, he would have done that. Okay. He
Right.
created people who can make a free choice whether to recognize him and to love him and serve him and know him or to reject that. And then there's
Right.
consequences to that. Talk about
Right.
that.
Well, God, I mean, He has to allow us to choose Him. And the analogy I think is the best one is the parent child. We want our kids to know us and to love us. And if they really want to break away, we're not going to go force them. If they want to shun themselves from the family, we'll do everything we possibly can so they won't do that. But ultimately, it's their choice. If they want to reject us, we have to allow that, and that's where the concept of hell comes in. Hell is, I believe, is where we ultimately choose to be because of our own pride, and that's the reason that they do it. I believe it's all about pride. It's the most
Yeah.
deadly sin.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it this way. Um, Hell, if you reject the creator, if you reject the gift giver and God, whether you're an evil person or whether you're striving to be a moral person in the world, God showers the world with his graces and blessings and his gifts. Okay. But ultimately, at the end of your life, if you've rejected the gift giver, then you don't get the gifts. That's hell. In other words, and
Right,
the primary gift is the gift of himself. In other words,
right,
you don't see, you can reject God's love in the world, okay, while you're alive. But at the end of your life, if you reject it, well, then you got what you wanted. You got what you asked for. You slapped his hand away. He didn't slap
mhm,
you down there. You chose hell. I
exactly.
don't think I'm off in that, Bob.
Right. No, I think that's true, and it's so people think that there can't be a loving God because of number one is the problem of pain in the world. Number two is they wouldn't he wouldn't send us to hell. Well, he doesn't send us to hell. He does everything that he can so that we won't go there. And then maybe we'll get into it later on. But then there's the fact that he's hidden. It is. I agree that it's difficult. God is in many ways hidden and silent, and sometimes the silence to us can be deafening. But these are the three ways: the pain, the hiddenness, and then the getting busy in our lives with other things to the point where that becomes more important than God. We put God in the back seat, if in the in the seat at all, and we don't want to change. And those are the reasons. That's the reason why people doubt the existence of God.
Yeah. If you're just joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe, real very, very honored to be joined by Robert Trussel. His new book is out from Sophia Press, The Logic That God Exists, a handbook on belief in God through simple reason to bring you peace. Like I said, Bob, there's so many places I want to go, but let me see if I could uh go in this direction. You mentioned people don't want to change. How much in your mind is it a problem that it seems that human beings, or a great many human beings, allow their passions to control their reason rather than vice versa? Again, I'm going to go back to the title of your book where you specifically say the logic. You're talking about logic using your reason. That if you, here's where I'm going with this, and this is where I want your comment. When you say that I'm a slave of Jesus Christ, paradoxically, you are truly free. And when you reject, let's say, Jesus Christ and the teachings of his church, you are truly a slave because you are a slave to your passions. You're not using your reason. Talk to me about that.
Right. Well, you're in bondage if you do that, and that's very hard for people to understand. But if you're a believer in God and you have a relationship with God, it gives you a tremendous sense of freedom. And otherwise, you're a slave to your passions, and you can get into anything, and you can get untethered from God. And when you get untethered, anything can happen. And that goes back to the C.S. Lewis quote. You know, if you don't believe in God, you'll believe anything. And so that's why you see in today's culture, you see now there's a confusion over whether which bathroom boys should go in, or or maybe they should play on the girls' sports teams. This is all stuff that emanates from being detached or untethered from your creator, and it causes all sorts of crazy radical positions that each one gets crazier than the one before because they're not tethered. You have to be connected to your great to your to God, your creator. You have to be, otherwise all kinds of bad stuff happens.
Well, and again, I mean, that's really what we're seeing. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, Nietzsche even warned about this. In other words, when he wrote, and I'm paraphrasing, well, if we kill God, do not we ourselves have to become gods? But then if you have billions of gods, or everybody's their own god, like you said, the destruction, the depravity, it can be limitless. And I mean, it
Yeah,
just starts with rejecting the logos of two genders, let's say, saying there's
right.
125, tomorrow there'll be 125,000. Um,
Yeah,
it's the problem is going back is the same problem going back to the garden, the same problem going back to the fall is I want to be I want to be God. I want to raise my throne alongside the throne of God. And that just leads to, I mean, go look out your window.
yeah, right. You want the it's the original sin. It's the you want the knowledge of good and evil. You want to be able to say what's good and what's evil. And how dare you ever? That's why everyone has their personal truths. It's because it's their idea of what right and wrong is, and it's untethered, and it's like this whole problem with censorship. They say, well, you can't say this, you can't say that. Who gets to determine what should be censored? It's them. It's who's ever censoring is determining what needs to be censored, and it's all stems from the same thing. And for people like you and me, and I think many, most of your listeners, it's self-evident, but to others, it is a very bridge too far for them in their lives right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Please, everyone, if you're listening to me here at the front line with Joe and Joe on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, Bob's book is out from Sophia Press. Please click the link in the description and you'll get a 15% discount. The Logic That God Exists, a handbook on belief in God through simple reason to bring you peace. We're going to get into the peace aspect of it after the break, but I do have a couple minutes before the break. Bob, at least we could get started on this question. There's barriers against belief. I believe you note in the book 3 barriers. At least we could get started on this. What are some of the barriers, and how could we overcome them?
Well, the barriers I just mentioned are the is the problem of pain, as C.S. Lewis puts it. People have a really hard time with believing that God could allow all the pain and misery in this world, and how could that be? And the way I look at that is the our our life here is an analogy to if somebody came to you and said, I'm going to give you 10 minutes of pain, and after that, you're going to have 70 years of bliss. Would you take that deal? Like people, everyone would say, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, the deal God gives us is way better than that. So, because we're getting whatever, however long our lifetime is here, whether it's, some are quite short, some are 100 years, but however long that is, and it's not all pain for most people. Most people have a lot of happiness and joy in their life too. But in exchange for that, you get an eternity with me in heaven. And so that the answer, the short answer is it's short. What we go through down here, it may seem like a long time here, but in the context of reality or of eternity, it's relatively short. And Jesus says, "On that day, you will not ask me any questions," and and Saint Paul said, at the end of the race, it was worth it, and all that he went through, it was well worth it. And so that's to me, that's the answer. Is you just have to look at it that way.
Yeah, we're going to take a break, Robert Trussell, in a second. I've had numerous conversations in my life with atheist friends, and they are friends, whether they're lapsed Catholic or whatever the case may be. And
Sure.
that's probably the argument you hear the most. My response, okay, and then we'll go to a break. My response is usually this: Look, I don't know. I don't know about the problem of pain and suffering. I don't. Here's what
Mm,
I do know. The God that I'm being criticized for believing in entered into that pain and suffering. He's not aloof.
right.
He's not aloof to it.
Right.
He chooses, God the Father chooses to send God the Son to enter into our pain and suffering in order to redeem us. So if I'm suffering, you can't say that God doesn't care because he suffered too on the cross. That's not one argument that, let's say, an aggressive atheist can make, that God doesn't care because he himself suffered greatly. I'll give you 30 seconds on that, Bob.
Right. I mean, Jesus, he is our he's aligned with us in that suffering, and you make the case that he suffered more because of all the emotional and mental torture, that this is like his kids doing it to him. The way I look at that, and he put his money where his mouth is, so to speak, and besides that, I think the Catholic Church gives us in Christianity a chance to align back with Him and and share suffering and give meaning to the suffering. Just as his suffering had meaning, our suffering has meaning.
Absolutely. If you're just joining me here, we're going to take a quick break. Robert Trussel's with me here at the front line with Joe and Joe. His new book, The Logic That God Exists, a handbook on belief in God through simple reason to bring you peace. So after the break, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about miracles, and I want to talk a little bit about peace. So stick around. This is a great conversation, and wherever you're hearing it, whether on the radio or social media, please share it. Please share it. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, flying solo today, not with Joe Resinello. He'll be back on the next show. And I am pleased and honored to be joined by Robert Trussell, the founder and retired chief executive officer of Tempur-Pedic International, a company that everyone out there knows. His new book is out from Sophia Press, The Logic That God Exists, a handbook on belief in God through simple reason to bring you peace. Now, I'm sure it's available at many outlets. I would encourage all our listeners to buy it from Sophia Press. You could click the link in the description, and you will get a 15% discount. Bob, let me talk to you a little bit, if I can, about miracles, okay? Because the miracles that pop out to me, And again, we're going back to the idea of logic and reason, okay, that you
Right,
could
right.
apply to, like I think of Our Lady of Fatima, and you could talk about it more, or Our Lady of Guadalupe, and you look at the tilma, which scientific study has been done on it, the shroud, all these things. Talk to us about miracles. You note some of them in your book.
Yeah. Uh, I I get a lot of feedback on the miracles, and what people say, atheist types, they say that you cannot prove the Bible through miracles, and you can't prove miracles through the Bible. It's a circular reference. They're saying that you can't do that. You can't say because I say, well, Jesus, he walked on water, he healed the sick, he raised the dead, all these spectacular miracles. They say, Bob, that's just from the Bible. That could have been a made up story. And so, uh, my answer to that is, uh, Jesus said that to his disciples that you will do miracles greater than these, and they did. Okay, well, that's still in the Bible, but the thing is, it kept on going after post biblical, extra biblical. These miracles kept on happening throughout the centuries, and you've got the um, uh, the lives of the saints, and there's 10,000 canonized saints. And there's an average, I think, of two miracles associated with each saint. So there's 20,000 documented miracles in the church is very deliberate and very picky, and takes a long time to prove these things. And for every miracle that they approve, there's probably 100 that they don't approve. So you've got thousands of miracles that have been performed in the name of Jesus Christ since the Bible, since those days, and you've got stigmata, you've got the uncorrupted bodies of saints lying in state in churches. And to me, the crowning uh, miracle, current day miracle, is the Blessed Virgin Mary and her many apparitions, almost always to children with no guile, and the spectacular miracles that have come from that, from the Fatima and Guadalupe and Lourdes, all these things. These are not in the Bible. These are all proof. These are all miracles that continue to prove Jesus's words.
What I say on the show all the time, Bob Trussel, is that, particularly we were talking about, America and a lot of the problems and, that we have in America. We mentioned it earlier, when you can't determine which bathroom you could go in, you're really on the wrong path. I keep saying to everybody, everybody's out there and again, politics are important and we have to involve ourselves in politics. We're called to as Catholics. Okay. We have to
Yeah.
go out and vote and things like that. But ultimately I say to Joe Resinello on the show all the time, I say, Joe, you know what I'm waiting for? I'm waiting for a Guadalupe type of moment. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for a Guadalupe kind of moment where an entire country converts to the Catholic Church in 10 years, and abortion is eradicated like human sacrifice was eradicated in Mexico. And again, if you just to let our audience know, okay, and you could talk a little bit more about this while we're on the topic, okay. If you look at Guadalupe, if you look at the Tilma, okay, why is it so important to focus, let's say, on that or Fatima? Because people who have applied the scientific method to studying these things do not have an explanation for what happened. Richard Dawkins' best explanation for Fatima is, well, 70,000 people had a mass delusion. Sorry, Richard,
Sorry.
you're not making a scientific statement, pal. You're just making a
No.
wishful statement.
Right. No, these miracles are stunning. They're spectacular, and there's no other explanation for them. And you have to be a complete. Your mission has to be and a militant atheist to not let these miracles influence you, especially when they're all connected to Jesus. And that proves the Bible. The fact that it's not a circular reference. These miracles, these current day miracles, are signs that he has allowed, that refute that argument completely.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you used the word militant atheist. There are some. I mean, Anthony Flew was a probably the most renowned atheist in the second part of the 20th century. He didn't quite get to conversion before he died, but he did retitle the book that he had written decades earlier, titled "There Is No God," and he reissued the book and said, "There is a God," and a lot of that had to
Okay.
do with logic and science. And here's where I'm going with this, and we'll get back to get back to your book a little bit. The logic that God exists, a handbook on belief in God through simple reason to bring you peace. The laws of nature. Just looking at the laws of nature. Again, if you're a militant
Yes.
atheist, you're just rejecting something that's right in front. You're not believing your own lying eyes. You know where I'm going, Bob. I love your comments.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the universe operates by rules. So how did the rules get here? Did they just make themselves up? I mean, water boils at 212 degrees and freezes at 32. The acceleration of gravity is at 10 meters per second per second. Everyone knows the speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. This is everywhere in the universe. So this is a constant. This is everywhere you go. These are constants. Why would there be constants at all? If there was a random universe with a big bang and everything's just kind of bumping into each other, why would it form these hard and fast rules throughout the universe? They just could not have invented themselves. They're even if you say they're intrinsic to nature, there's no reason why they should be ordered. Why should you get order from disorder? Why should that be? That's illogical. That's what there's no logic, and that's why these people are and they have a desperation of logic. So what they do is they say, okay, Bob, that couldn't have happened. I guess you're right about that. But then that must mean that there's trillions of universes. And in one of these universes, all this stuff did happen by itself. And that just happens to be our universe. And to me, you just at one point, you got to just shake your head. They just don't want to believe there's a stumbling block there.
Well, well, again, if you want to take and again apply logic to that argument about the multiverse, because I think the multiverse is just made up. Me personally,
It
okay,
is. It's ridiculous.
right, because
I think it's
because
ridiculous.
again,
Yes.
it could give it's maybe a plausible explanation in their minds. It's a
Yeah.
plausible explanation for why this universe is fine tuned. But then you ask a question, okay, but what intelligence was behind the creation of those trillion or trillions of universes where they're all different? Why wouldn't they all just be the same, random, no laws whatsoever? It doesn't make sense. But let me continue. I hate the fact that we have limited time, but we do because this is such a fascinating conversation. Let's talk about DNA. To me,
Okay.
when you're trying to look at, let's say, Darwin's theory of evolution, okay, these they were looking at nothing like what we see now. As far as, let's say, the cell is concerned, certainly with DNA, these are machines, Bob.
Right.
Machines have designers. Okay,
Exactly.
you don't. This is a code. It's a language, just like you and I are speaking a language. DNA is again. I'm going to throw it over to you because to me, if you're rejecting the design in DNA or the human cell, you're just not believing your lying eyes.
Right, right. Because the more through science you look into it, you start looking at these flagellum bacteria, which are literally outboard motors in your cells that allow your cells to scoot around. I don't know the real science, but if you see the pictures of them, they have thousands of working parts, like an outboard motor. And
Mm.
how did that happen by itself? And how does the DNA form that by itself? And there's no way. I mean, they say, well, it's through thousands of years of natural selection, but there's so many holes in that. It's like Swiss cheese. I mean, why would a person's eye develop over a million years or whatever through mutations? Because you've had to go through a million years where you had half an eye, until it became usable. Um, our DNA is 4-character digital code. It takes about 2 billion lines of unique handwritten code and probably 25,000 engineers to make an iPhone. And so our bodies are infinitely more complicated than an iPhone. How can all that it is very similar in a lot of ways to computer code. Computer code does not code itself from nothing. And so for this to have happened, the answer is, who's the programmer? There's got to be a programmer if you got code. And people can understand that now. And that's why I think that's a good analogy, because everyone understands code. Everyone knows programmers and know how complex it is and how you need it. But to think that this happened by itself, I mean, it just is beyond comprehension that people believe this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I've always, the way I usually put it is this: if I'm walking through the forest, I'm in the middle of nature, and all of a sudden I stumble upon a Cadillac. I don't say, well, the Cadillac just randomly showed up there. Somebody
Right,
made that Cadillac,
right,
and that it didn't just pop in there amongst the trees in the mountains. Okay, and again, it's something that you could just know simply by looking at it. Just simply by
right.
looking at it, you
Yeah,
know that is a designed machine. The same
exactly.
way, if you extrapolate that out and you say, well, I could see you do the same thing with the universe, the natural world. You say it, like we were talking about the laws of nature. It's obviously designed, and I don't need Lawrence Krauss or Sam Harris or Richard Dawkins or any of them to try to tell
Yeah,
me anything different. You could come up with some sort of half-baked ideas all you want, but I for one am looking at the universe and I see design and order and logos. Okay,
right.
not chaos.
If you found a camera on Mars, would you assume that somebody left the camera there, or would you assume that the camera just evolved on Mars to by itself?
No, seriously. Let's let's keep it moving because we have some time. And if you're just joining me here at the front line with Joe and Joe, flying solo, Joe Ressinello is not with me today. He'll be back on the next episode. I'm with Robert Trussel. Robert is the founder and chief executive officer of Tempur-Pedic International. Robert's written a new book out from Sophia Press. Please click the link in the description, and you'll get a 15% discount because you know Joe and Joe. The Logic That God Exists, a handbook on belief in God through simple reason to bring you peace. And I would emphasize to everyone, Joe and I say on the show all the time, Joe and I learn as much from our guests as our audience does. And we need to equip ourselves to be able to make these very logical, again, logic, reason, these very logical, reasonable arguments. But now let's go to a different place, Bob Trussell. I know in my life, after I've gone to confession, we're all sinners. Nobody here is walking on water. Okay. And I know that I have been forgiven of my sins, and I feel liberated. I feel at peace because I believe Jesus, okay, that he will forgive me of my sins if I ask him for it. Says in scripture,
Mm-hmm.
going back to scripture, I believe Peter says, how many times should I forgive my brother? 7 times in a day. And Jesus says, no, 70 times, 7 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he does for us. Okay. And I know
Yes,
the things that wreck that peace. I'm talking about my inner peace. Okay.
yes,
Is when I sin. Is
yeah,
when I do, like Paul said, when I do the things I ought not do, and I don't do the things
right,
that I should do. How
right.
does belief in God bring one peace?
I think it does because uh, everyone's perhaps a little different, but I feel like there's a connection between me and God, me and my Creator, and that connection. And you're right. When you're in a state of sin, that connection is broken, and you feel it, and you want to get back to confession. But that connection is important for peace, and I think it makes you look at the events that are happening to you and to others in the world as part of a plan, as that it is something that God is God's plan and not our plan. And that's why sometimes when things don't go our way, we're very down about it. But if we think then in the context of eternity, in the context of God, that this is all his will, nothing happens that is not God's will. He allows everything. There's nothing that happens, no matter how bad it is, that he didn't make it happen, but he could stop it if he wanted to. So he lets these things happen. A lot of it is again the parent-child relationship, where you allow your kids to go through some stuff, and because it betters them, it helps them, and it's necessary. If we have a completely carefree life, if you think about it, it's not good. It's not good for our mentality, not good for our development, not good for our soul.
Yeah, I'm always struck by the idea, like when I think about the prodigal son, I also think about, I think it was T.S. Eliot wrote in the Four Quartets, talked about, and I'm paraphrasing, but the idea that we always want to go out, we want to strive, we want to go look for something, because we believe there might be something better over there, only to return to the place where you started and know it for the first time. I'd always thought that was very profound, because to me, that's why I think that the parable of the prodigal son is so popular, because that resonates with nearly everyone who is
Yeah,
seeking God. The prodigal son did not appreciate the peace and love and all the good that he had in his father's home. He just had to go out. He just had to go and experience it for himself,
yeah,
only to eventually return home. Oh, by the way, some pain and suffering and feeding some pigs. Okay.
right.
Um, and then come back and recognize the place for the first time, for its goodness and its beauty and its peace and security that the Father, who is obviously God the Father in the parable, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think this is something that we all experience. We all have been the prodigal son at some stage, certainly in our faith. In my story, I had 16 years of Catholic education, and I didn't go to mass for 10 years. But then I hit the rocks, so to speak, and I leaned back into God, and he was very glad to take me back. And he gave me the most unbelievable answer to a prayer. I mean, I'm a thoroughbred racehorse guy, and next thing I know, I'm the mattress king. I mean, seriously. I mean, I literally couldn't spell mattress, but I didn't know anything about it. I just all of a sudden I encountered this unbelievable product. So that's, to me, in my own life, I think everyone has this. And if you're an atheist, I don't think you have that as much. I mean, maybe you do, but you're not looking at it in through the eyes of faith.
Yeah, I mean, and even on a worldly level, okay, if let's say, for argument's sake, everything we're talking about is wrong, and at the end of our lives, and I've thought about this because your story is similar to mine, except the fact that I'm not the mattress king. But having gone to Catholic school, moving away from the faith for a good 20 years of my life, living, let's just say, not a Catholic life,
Mhm.
I tried it my way. So
Mhm.
even if I go into the ground when I'm dead and God does not exist, well, I won't regret anything because I won't have consciousness. I will cease to exist. But I would tell some of my atheist friends, and I have told them this, who, by the way, believe in Logos and believe in leading an ordered life, just not in the context of God. I say,
Yeah.
I tried it my way. Okay.
Right.
And you use the word really. It's funny you say that because I say that all the time. I
Yeah.
say, I look back on the last 15 years of my life. After I started to listen to God, I'm like, really? Really? And again, I'm not conquering the world, but there's things that have happened that defy logic because I wasn't living that kind of life. I would say I put myself through my pain and suffering. I don't have to blame God for it. So even on that level, even if we just go against the natural order of things, it's just not going to lead to a very good place even if God doesn't exist. Okay, it's not going to be good for your life. You're not going to lead a good life.
Right. And you've just really outlined Pascal's wager. Pascal, who's, for people who don't know, was a famous French Blaise Pascal, a famous French scientist, mathematician, who, among many other things, he proposed Pascal's wager that about belief in God, and he said if you're any kind of a betting man, you would always believe in God and follow the principles, because if it turns out that there is no God, you're no worse off. But if it turns out there is a God, you've got the biggest payoff you could ever think of, eternal life with him. And so that gets back to logic. He was a mathematician. He was just looking at the thing logically and going, well, even if I don't have a little trouble with this, I'm going to believe, and I'm going to go along with the precepts that people tell me. I'm gonna practice my faith, as weak as it is. If you do that, God will. If you just say, Lord, help my, uh, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief, that kind of thing, God will come running to you, and in your life. And so that Pascal's wager is something that I think people can fall back on too, if they're having a trouble with it. Okay, let's maybe what if I'm wrong? I say to the people who are atheists, what if you're wrong? What if it's all true? Then you're on the outside looking in. Then you die, and the first thing you see is Jesus, and you're going, "Oh man, whoa, I'm in trouble now." You don't want to gamble like that. So you got to be smart about it. And
Yeah, and like
there's
you
one
said,
other. Yeah,
no, go ahead, Bob.
I was just going to say there's one other thing I've got written down here next to Pascal's wager is Occam's razor. Occam's razor is is a is a logical precept which says that the simplest answer is usually the best. When in doubt, take the simplest answer. It serves you well through a lot of different things in life. Well, the simplest answer is that we have God is the creator. It's all true. It's what we've been taught, that he created the world. He created us. He died for our sins, and he's waiting for us in heaven if we want to join him. That is the simplest. Is getting into these multiverses and all these other things that are, again, it's like you get contorted logic if you don't accept the one that's most simple.
Yeah, yeah. Robert Trussel's here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Please go out and buy his book. We encourage you to buy it from Sophia Press. Click the link in the description. The Logic That God Exists, a handbook on belief in God through simple reason to bring you peace. Bob, before we run out of time, please let our audience know where else they could buy the book. And perhaps if you have any social media or anything like that where people can follow what you have going on.
You can go to the logicthatgodexists.com. And of course, all the other places you'd expect to be able to buy books.
All right. Let's in our last couple of minutes, Bob. You know, I think about wealth all the time. I do things to try to make more money for my family. I'm just a working guy, right? You mentioned that you had setbacks before you came upon Tempur-Pedic, okay? And you're a
Yeah,
wealthy man. Let's call it the way it is. But you had setbacks, real
yeah,
setbacks. When you got $1 million in debt and a couple mortgages, let me tell you something.
yeah,
People think not being able to pay the gas and electric bill is rough. That's even rougher, okay? That's rough on steroids, okay? When you're dealing with that type of setback, all right? Talk about
yeah,
humility, because you strike me. I'm not just saying this. You strike me as someone who embraces humility. You are a humble man, and you are wealthy. Okay, talk about, because I can hear people saying it, perhaps um, the proper way the church teaches that we need to approach material wealth in this world. We got a couple minutes left before the end of the show. I'd love your comments on that.
I just think that whatever degree of wealth you have is a gift. And especially we can see that so much in America. Because I mean, if you look at our physical needs and comforts that are taken care of in this country, and you just think 100 years ago where this country was, and how about all the other countries? Since the beginning of man, it's been hardship. And so we are so lucky, for a better word, to be where we are. And so, therefore, we have to look at it as everything we have as a gift from God. And so it's not ours, it's God's. And so if we have a certain amount of money, whatever, a lot or a little, we have a duty to look at it the correct way and to think, does God want us to use this money? How does God want me to use this money? Does he want it to get a new motorboat, or the new, at some point, it is, you can want more and more material items. You can always travel more. You can always have a bigger house. You can always get another house. And so it's, to me, it's a balancing act. Uh, you I got to tell you, sometimes I feel that I should sell it all and give it to the poor. But I've got a wife and I got kids who really wouldn't like that so much. And so I think there's a balance that you have to find. You have to look at it as much as you can through the eyes of God and what His will is. And you just got to ask Him, what do you want me to do? And so in my case, I learned how to evangelize mattresses. I learned how to sell mattresses through the media, through 800 numbers and newspapers, and then eventually the internet. And I that taught me on the job why people advertise it, because it works. Advertising, it works. And so I thought, well, the Catholic Church ought to have a bigger ad budget than it has. Mm-hmm. It ought to have at least as big an ad budget as Budweiser, say, right? And so I met a guy by the name of Tom Peterson who, and he had already had the same idea, and I signed on with him, and he launched Catholics Come Home, and I'm the chairman, and he's the president. And we went to Rome, and we went through the bowels of the Vatican to get their blessing that we were going to do TV ads for the Catholic Church in the United States. And they said, if you can, the United States is the only country where this will work. If it works there, you can come back to us, and we'll think about other countries. So they said, go get them.
Unfortunately, Bob, we have to leave it there. This has been such a wonderful conversation. Robert Trussel has written a new book out from Sophia Press. You also can buy it at Amazon, but if you click the link in the description for Sophia Press, you'll get a 15% discount, and you'll be supporting our Catholic publisher. So Sophia Press is fantastic. The Logic That God Exists, a handbook on belief in God through simple reason to bring you peace. Bob Trussel, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Needless to say, you're welcome back at the front line with Joe and Joe anytime, our brother.
Appreciate a lot. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
God bless you.
Okay. God bless you, and thank you all out there for joining us on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on your AM dial, 103.9 on your FM dial, spreading the truth of the Catholic faith to the New York City metropolitan area. Download the app, share it with your friends. You'll have access to all of our station's content, and wherever you see Joe and I on social media, X, Rumble, Facebook, YouTube, where you see this video, please share it. Share all of our content. Let's get the message out there. Thanks once again, and remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.